It's Moby Dick on Saturday night. Ba 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 ba. Howdy, y'all. Joe Hills is here from Nashville. Tonight, y'all are my live streaming audience. We're gonna be reading some Melville. Moby Dick in particular. Gonna try to get through chapters 64 to 70 or more than you've ever seen, but they're kind of short. So, I was gonna say, I want to jump right into the reading, but first, I got a few tips to acknowledge. We had a couple tips that rolled in last night right after the stream ended. Daniel, thank you for tipping 5, who said, way to speak facts about the U.S. healthcare system. Congratulations on the marriage. What is your top 3 favorite foods? I'm terrible at ranking things, but I do enjoy pizza, burritos, and, I don't know, whiskey. Is that a food? We also got a tip that rolled in after the stream ended last night from Zoe, who says, hope this helps, man. Thank you, Zoe. Then we got another tip that rolled in today in response to our Twitter thing from last week. It's weird. Twitter sharing tweets a week later with people is super unhelpful 90% of the time. But legitimately, we cannot say, I say we, my family and I, Badger, my daughter and I, cannot say thank you enough to everybody who saw how much financial trouble we were in because of that emergency dentistry and has been tossing money our way. In particular, Abigail tipped 125 and just writes, teeth. So thank you to Abigail for that 125 for the teeth. That's 6 face camera expansion milestones. Let's go ahead and get those underway. Please direct your attention down here to slot 9. Oh my gosh, this thing is broken. It's fine, I fixed it. Down here in slot 9, I'm putting the hot in the hot bar. I'm going to say, oh my gosh, this thing is broken too. Why is everything broken? Everything is broken in OBS all at once. OBS doesn't like it when the face camera gets big, but we haven't even started expanding yet. So, here we go. Howdy, y'all. Joe Hills here, expanding as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee. D-da-D-da-D, D-da-D-da-D-D-D. Numero dos, even larger Joe, la-da-da-da. Numero tres, even larger face, da-da-da-do. Numero cuatro, how about some more Joe? For that 5th face camera expansion milestone. Like Jacob Marley, these chains and forged in life are here to remind me that humanity is my business. It's time to begin expanding as I'm pulled down to the deep below. Expand, Joe, and enter the joust. Bum, 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 bum. Lowering the Joe Pasity now to 90%. At this point, each additional face camera expansion milestone will be accompanied by a corresponding drop in Joe Pasity. Numero 6, even larger face. Da-da-da-da. Thank you very much, Abigail, for starting us off strong. Even before we started the stream. Presumably, once again, that was in response to our ask for help on Twitter. And then we got another tip for 10 from Sorrel, who writes, Tooth Fund. Thank you very much, Sorrel. That puts us now only 5 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. We really do appreciate it. Like, this was a really tight month last month anyway. And, yeah, because of the wedding and the honeymoon expenses and everything there was slightly more expensive than I thought. And then also, surprise, here's a huge emergency dental expense. So, yay! Thank you so much to Sorrel and Abigail. Anybody else who'd like to tip, tips are welcome via paypal.me/Joe Hills and YouTube Super Chat. Wafzilla says, woo, you got him. Real quick, before we start reading Moby Dick, if you missed it, Wafzilla's, what do you call it? Rehearsal dinner toast. The best man, who of course is Wafzilla, gets to give a toast at the rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding. And Wafzilla actually just got that uploaded yesterday, if anybody wants to watch it. I know my Patreon, he had gone into the Discord and posted a kind of a Mad Libs request and got people to submit things. And then he took the funniest submissions and made a best man toast out of it. So yeah, it's got a lot of good jokes in there. So you can go ahead and bookmark that for later or watch that now. It's your choice. Okay, so we got to get set up for the stream. Because gestures broadly. This is a Moby Dick stream. We are going to be reading Herman Melville's classic novel, which is not technically science fiction, but it anticipates the invention of the internet and cell phones better than any other work I've ever seen in science fiction history. So, keep your eyes peeled for that. Basically, if you're not familiar with Moby Dick, the premise is that this guy, like, walks up to you at a party and is like, hey, I'm Ishmael. Let me tell you about the time all these phonies on land really sucked, and then I went to serve on a whaling vessel. And, oh boy, I got a lot of things to look up on my phone about everything about what I experienced. And, yeah. Centauratron says, OMG, that's what it was for? Yep, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pin that Best Man's Toast in the Discord. So there you go. Hey, we got another tip rolling in for 5 from Odd. Thank you, Odd. That's going to get us evenly to our next face camera expansion milestone. So here we go. It's time to expand Jost. Lowering the Joe opacity now to 70%, putting us only $10 away from the most obnoxious face camera expansion milestone, the Joni Stark helmet cam. Odd writes, I recently finished an extended period of dentistry nightmares. Hopefully Badger's recovery wasn't too difficult. It's going well on the whole. The, what do you call those? The, stitches are dissolving, and it all seems like it's going properly. Wow, I'm getting a lot of messages on Discord from Jevin. Okay. Cool. That's nothing I need to respond to right now. We're going to keep this train moving. So, there are 6 relatively short, interlinked chapters in Moby Dick in a row coming up. And so, here's what I'm thinking. We're going to go ahead and just hit them like dominoes. Boom, 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 boom. I don't know if that's exactly how dominoes works, because I don't really like their pizza. But we're just gonna keep this train going. Choo choo. Okay. Also, Dutch Rabbit Mafia writing Vanderbilt W. Vanderbilt beating #1 ranked Alabama today. You know, they've been I was a student at Vanderbilt well before they got this stupid anchor down thing. I think anchor down is the dumbest motto ever. But in our alma mater, they say at the end, forward ever be thy watchword, conquer and prevail. So yeah, conquer and prevail, Vanderbilt football. Forget anchoring down. Conquer and prevail. That's my watchword, forward ever. So anyway, yeah, Vanderbilt W against Alabama. Woo. I did not catch that game. I was taking a nap. We had a very long day walking around the Oktoberfest here in Nashville. Let me tell you, we didn't attend the Oktoberfest, but the fences were extensive, and so literally we had to walk around the perimeter to get to where we were going. But we were going to the Tennessee State Museum, which was right on the border of the Oktoberfest. And apparently, we could have gone clockwise from where we started at the farmer's market and gotten there immediately, but I didn't understand geography. And so we walked all the way around the perimeter of the Oktoberfest in order to get to the State Museum. We went to the Tennessee State Archives first because I thought that was where the State Museum was. So if you have a map of Bicentennial Park in Nashville, you'll see why this is very funny for everybody who, you know, doesn't have a problem walking for long distances. But yeah. Nola says, did Vandy win against the Tide? Yeah, they were undefeated until they faced Vanderbilt. Day. Post dentistry nightmare emoji in the Discord chat. Okay. So, hope everybody's having a fantastic evening so far. I'm going to post the tipping link one more time, and we are going to jump right into Moby Dick. Just so you know, when we are reading Moby Dick, I am not going to be acknowledging tips in the middle of the, chapter. I'll come back to those at the end of the chapter. So let's see here. We're going to chapter 64. We just finished chapter 63, The Crotch, last stream. So you guys can check the VOD for that. This one, chapter 64, is called Stubbs' Supper. So, here we go. I'm going to be mining in Minecraft while gathering materials. Well, no, I guess that is gathering materials. I'm going to be gathering materials in Minecraft, which you already knew, because that part is obvious, while live reading Moby Dick, which I have not prepared for. The last time I read this book was 5 years, maybe 6 years ago. And so we are, as the kids say, doing it live. Let's go. Chapter 64, Stubbs' Supper, from Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. Stubbs' whale had been killed some distance from the ship. It was a calm, so, forming a tandem of 3 boats, we commenced the slow business of towing the trophy to the Pequod. And now, as we, 18 men with our 36 arms and 180 thumbs and fingers, slowly toiled, hour after hour, upon that inert, sluggish corpse in the sea, and it seemed hardly to budge at all, except at long intervals, good evidence was hereby furnished of the enormousness of the mass which we moved. For upon the great canal of Hong Ho, or whatever they call it in China, 4 or 5 laborers on the footpath will draw a bulky freighted junk at the rate of 1 mile an hour. But this grand argosy we towed heavily forged along as if laden with pig lead in bulk. Darkness came on. But 3 lights up and down in the Pequod's main rigging dimly guided our way, till drawing near, we saw Ahab dropping one of several more lanterns over the bulwarks. Vacantly eyeing the heaving whale for a moment, he issued the usual orders for securing it for the night, and then, handing his lantern to a seaman, went his way into the cabin, and did not come forward again until morning. Though in overseeing the pursuit of the whale, Captain Ahab had evinced his customary activity, to call it so, yet now that the creature was dead, some vague dissatisfaction, or impatience, or despair seemed working in him, as if the sight of that dead body reminded him that Moby Dick was yet to be slain. And though 1,000 other whales were brought to his ship, all that would not one jot advance his grand monomaniac object. Very soon you would have thought from the sound on the Pequod's decks that all hands were preparing to cast anchor in the deep, for heavy chains were being dragged along the deck, and the thrust rattling out of the portholes. But by those clanging links, the vast corpse itself, not the ship, is to be moored, tied by the head to the stern, and by the tail to the bows. The whale now lies with its black hull close to the vessels, and seen through the darkness of the night which obscured the spars and rigging aloft, the two, ship and whale, seemed yoked together like colossal bullocks, whereof one reclines while the other remains standing. A little item may well be related here. The strongest and most reliable hold which the ship has upon the whale when moored alongside is by the flukes or tail, as from its greater density that part is relatively heavier than any other, excepting the side fins, its flexibility, even in death, causes it to sink low beneath the surface. So that when you, with the hand, you cannot get it from the boat in order to put the chain around it. But this difficulty is ingeniously overcome. A small, strong line is prepared with a wooden float at its outer end and a weight in its middle, while the other end is secured to the ship. By adroit management, the wooden float is made to rise on the other side of the mass, so that now, having girdled the whale, the chain is readily made to follow suit, and, being slipped along the body, is at last locked fast round the smallest part of the tail, at the point of junction with its broad flukes or lobes. If moody Ahab was now all quiescence, at least so far as could be known on deck, Stubb, his second mate, flushed with conquest, betrayed an unusual but still good-natured excitement. Such an unwanted bustle was he, in that the Stead Starbuck, his official superior, quietly resigned to him, for the time, the sole management of affairs. One small helping cause of all this liveliness in Stubb was soon made strangely manifest. Stubb was a high liver. He was somewhat intemperately fond of the whale as a flavorish thing to his palate. A steak ere I sleep. You, Daggoo, overboard go you, and cut me one from his small. Here it be known that though these wild fishermen do not, as a general thing, according to that great military maxim, make the enemy defray the current expenses of the war, at least before realizing the proceeds of the voyage, yet now and then you find some of these Nantucketers who have a genuine relish for that particular part of the stern whale designated by Stubb, comprising the tapering extremity of the body. About midnight that steak was cut and cooked, and lighted by 2 lanterns of sperm oil. Stubb stoutly stood up to his spermaceti supper at the capstan head, as if that capstan were a sideboard. Nor was Stubb the only banqueter on whale's flesh that night. Mingling their mumblings with their own mastifications, thousands on thousands of sharks swarming round the dead leviathan, smackingly feasted on its fatness. The few sleepers below in their bunks were often startled by the sharp slapping of the sharks' tails against the hull, within a few inches of the sleepers' hearts. Peering over the side, you could just see them. As before, you heard them, wallowing in the sullen, black waters, and turning over on their backs as they scooped out huge, globular pieces of the bigness of the whale, the bigness of a human head. This particular feat of the shark seems all but miraculous. How at such an apparently unassailable surface they contrive to gouge out such symmetrical mouthfuls remains a part of the universal problem of things. The mark they thus leave on the whale may best be likened to the hollow made by a carpenter countersinking for a screw. Though amid all the smoking horror and diabolism of a sea fight, sharks will be seen longingly gazing up to the ship's decks, ready to bolt down every killed man that is tossed to them. And though while the valiant butchers o'er the deck table are thus cannibally carving away under the table at the dead meat, and though were you to turn the whole affair upside down, it would still be pretty much the same thing. That is to say, a shocking sharkish business, enough for all parties. And though sharks are also the invariable outriders of all slave ships crossing the Atlantic, systematically trotting alongside to be handy in case a parcel is to be carried anywhere, or a dead slave to be decently buried, And though one or two such like instances might be set down, touching the set terms, places, and occasions when sharks do most socially congregate and most hilariously feast, yet there is no conceivable time or occasion where you will find them in such countless numbers, and in gayer or more jovial spirits than around a dead sperm whale, moored by night to a whale ship at sea. If you have never seen that sight, then suspend your decision about the propriety of devil worship and the expediency of conciliating the devil. But as yet, Stubb heeded not the mumblings of the banquet that was going on so nigh him, no more than the sharks heeded the smacking of his own Epicurean lips. "Cook! Cook! Where's that old fleece?" he cried at length, widening his legs still further, as if to form a more secure base for his supper, and at the same time darting his fork into the dish, as if stabbing with the lance. "Cook, you cook! Sail this way, cook!" The old cook, not in any very high glee at having been previously roused from his warm hammock at a most unseasonable hour, came shambling along from his galley. For, like many old cooks, there was something the matter with his knee-pans, which he did not keep well secured like his other pans. This old fleece, as they called him, came shuffling and limping along, assisting his step with tongs, which, after a clumsy fashion, were made of straightened iron hoops. This old man floundered along, and, in obedience to the word of command, came to a dead stop on the opposite side of Stubb's sideboard, when, with both hands folded before him, and resting on his two-legged cane, he bowed his arched back still further over, at the same time sideways inclining his head, so as to bring his best ear into play. "Cook!" said Stubb, rapidly lifting a rather reddish morsel to his mouth. "Don't you think this steak is, rather overdone? You've been beating the steak too much, cook. It's too tender. Don't I always say that to be good, a whale steak must be tough? There are those sharks now over the side. Don't you see they prefer it tough and rare? What a shindy they are kicking up. Cook, go talk to 'em. Tell 'em they are welcome to help themselves civilly and in moderation. But they must keep quiet. Blast me if I can hear my own voice. Away, cook, and deliver my message. Here, take this lantern," snatching one from the sideboard. "Now go and preach to 'em." Sullenly taking the offered lantern, old Fleece limped across the decks to the bulwarks, and then, with one hand dropping his light low over the sea, so as to get a good view of his congregation, with the other hand he solemnly flourished his tongs, and, leaning over the side in a mumbling voice, began addressing the sharks, while Stubb, crawling behind softly, overheard all that was said. "Fellow critters, I's ordered here to say that you must stop that damn noise there. You hear? Stop that damn smacking of the lip. Master Stubb, say that you fill your damn bellies up to the hatchlings. But by God, you must stop that damn racket." "Cook!" here interposed Stubb, accompanying the word with a sudden slap on the shoulder. "Cook! Why, damn your eyes, you mustn't swear that way when you're preaching. That's no way to convert sinners there, cook." Who dat? Then go preach to him yourself. Sullenly turning to go. No, cook. Go on. Go on. Well then, beloved fellow critters. Right, exclaimed Stubb approvingly. Coax 'em to it. Try that. And Fleece continued. Do you is all sharks and by nature very voracious? Yet I say to you fellow critters that voraciousness top that damn slapping of the tail. How do you think to hear? Suppose you keep up with such a damn slapping and biting there. Cook! Cried Stubb, collaring him. I won't have that swearing. Talk to 'em gentlemanly. Once more, the sermon proceeded. Your voraciousness, fellow critters, I don't blame ye so much, for that is nature and can't be helped. But to govern that wicked nature, that is the point. You is sharks, certainly, but if you govern the shark in you, why then you be angel. For all angel is nothing more than shark well governed. Now look here, brethren, just why wants to be civil, helping yourselves from that whale. Don't be tearing the blubber out your neighbor's mouth, I say. Is not one shark doed right as to the other to that whale? And by God, none of you has the right to that whale. That whale belong to someone else. I know some of you has very big mouth, bigger than others, but then the big mouth sometimes has the small bellies, so that the brightness of the mouth is not to swallow wide, but to bit off the blubber for the small fry of the sharks that can't get in to scrounge to help themselves. Well done, old Fleece. That's Christianity. Go on. No use going on. The damn villains will keep a scrounging and a slapping each other, Master Stubb. They don't hear one word. No use a preaching to such damn glubbins as you call 'em, till their bellies is full and their bellies is bottomless, and when they do get 'em full, they won't hear you then. They sink in the sea, go fast asleep on the coral, and can't hear nothing. Oh, not no more for ever and ever. Upon my soul, I am about of the same opinion. So, give the benediction, Fleece, and I'll away to my supper. Upon this, Fleece, holding both hands over the fishy mob, raised his shrill voice and cried, Cursed fellow critters, kick up the damnedest row ye can, fill your damn bellies till they bust, and then die. Now, cook, said Stubb, helping himself freely meanwhile. I shall now go back to the subject of the steak. In the first place, how old are you, Cook? What that do with this steak? Said the old cook testily. Silence. How old are you, Cook? 'Bout 90 days, say, he gloomily muttered. And you've lived in this world hard upon 100 years, Cook, and you don't know how to cook a whale steak. Rapidly bolting another mouth full at the last word, so that the morsel seemed a continuation of the question. Where were you born, Cook? I'm the hatchway in the ferry boat going over the Roanoke. Born in a ferry boat. That's queer, too. But I want to know, what country were you born in, Cook? Didn't I say the Roanoke country? He cried sharply. No, you didn't, Cook. But I'll tell you what I'm coming to, Cook. You must go home and be born o'er again. You don't know how to cook a whale steak yet. Bless my soul if I cook another one. he growled angrily, turning round to depart. Cook! Come back here, Cook! Hand me those tongs. Now, take that bit of steak and tell me if you think that steak cooked as it should be. Take it. I say, take it. Holding the tongs toward him. And taste it. Faintly smacking his withered lips over it for a moment, the old cook muttered, Best cooked steak I ever taste. Juicy. Very juicy. Cook! Said Stubb, squaring himself once more. Do you belong to the church? Passed one once in Cape Town, said the old man sullenly. And you have once in your life passed a holy church in Cape Town, where you doubtless heard a holy parson addressing his hearers as his beloved fellow creatures, have you, Cook? And yet you come here, and you tell me such a dreadful lie, as you did just now, eh? Where do you expect to go, Cook? Go to bed very soon, he mumbled, half turning as he spoke. Avast heave to, and I mean when you die, Cook. It's an awful question. Now, what's your answer? When this old man dies, said the cook slowly, changing his whole air and demeanor. He hisself won't go nowhere, but some blessed angel will come and fetch him. Fetch him, how? In a coach and four as they fetched Elijah? And, fetch him, where? Up there, said Fleece, holding his tongs straight over his head and keeping it there, very solemnly. So, then, you expect to go up into our main top, do you, Cook, when you're dead? But don't you know that the higher you climb, colder it gets? Main top, eh? Didn't say that at all, said Fleece, again in the sulks. You said up there, didn't you? And now look yourself and see where your tongues are pointing. But perhaps you expect to get into heaven by crawling through the lubber's hole, Cook. But no, Cook, you don't get there except you go by the regular way. Round by the riggin'. It's a ticklish business, but it must be done, else it's a no-go. But none of us are in heaven yet. Drop your tongs, Cook, and hear my orders. Do you hear? Hold your hat in one hand and clap the other upon your heart when I'm giving you orders, Cook. What? That's your heart there. That is your gizzard. Aloft. Okay, there, that's it. Now you have it. Hold it there now. And pay attention. All attention, said the old cook, with both hands placed as desired, vainly wriggling his grizzled head, as if to get both ears in front at one and the same time. Well then, Cook, you see that this whale steak of yours was so very bad that I have had to put it out of sight as soon as possible. You see that, don't you? Well, for the future, when you cook another whale steak for my private table here, the capstan, I'll tell you what to do so as not to spoil it by overdoing. Hold the steak in one hand and show a live coal to it with the other. That done, dish it, you hear? And now, tomorrow, Cook, when we are cutting the fish, be sure you stand by to get the tips of the fins have them put in pickle. As for the ends of the flukes, have them soused, cook. There. Now ye may go. But Fleece had hardly got 3 paces off when he was recalled. Cook! Give me cutlets for supper tomorrow night, in the mid-watch. Do you hear? I've asked you. Sail then, hello. Stop, make a bow before you go. Avast heaving again. Whale balls for breakfast. Don't forget. Wish by God, whale eat him. Said of him eat whale. I'm blessed if he ain't more of shark than Master Shark himself, muttered the old man, limping away, with which sage ejaculation he went to his hammock. And that concludes Chapter 64 of Herman Melville's Moby Dick, or the Whale. Any thoughts on that chapter? I see we got some comments in here. We've got, let's see. Scent says, bugging the cook about your steak not being cooked right is a tale as old as time, it seems like. Nola says, can't wait to see where they're going with all this. Sounds more like a, this steak sucks and I reckon you should go to hell. I have a Will steak-centered theology thing. Gizmo Rocks on the Twitch chat says, Mumbo still doesn't know where his sand is. That's not my fault. It was there when I built the tutorial. Maruki and Shadow Emperor, welcome, Shadow Emperor Raiders. You joined in the middle of Chapter 64 of Moby Dick, which apparently the pin did not hold up. The What We're Reading pin should have been there. Let's go ahead and get the Chapter 65 pin in. Chapter 65 is The Whale as a Dish. But yeah, it seems like Melville is really insistent on introducing every single job on the show. Centauratron says, I was not expecting a convert sharks to Christianity subplot. I mean, they have souls, don't they? Isn't that the premise of Jaws? Or The Exorcist? One of those. Okay. Whew. I need to take a second and have a few sips of my drink. I was trying to take sips in the middle of that, but there was not good opportunities. Or many of them, anyway. Any thoughts or questions on Chapter 64? Now's a good time before we move on to Chapter 65. There's a lot of short chapters in this segment of the book, so I was going to try and get through 6 today. That might be unwise, considering that we're already 37 minutes into the stream, and that was 1 chapter. And this is a 2-hour stream, in theory. But, by gore, I'm going to try. Centauratron says, that was a very funny chapter. I don't know if it's included in adaptations. I don't know if it's included in the abridged versions, but, like, I wouldn't read an abridged version of Moby Dick, because you lose the whole point of Moby Dick. Wandering Mass says, my lack of social knowledge makes it hard for me to determine if the steak was genuinely bad or the guy was just being a real jerk. I think kind of both. It wasn't cooked the way he liked, but he called the cook out of bed to cook the steak in the first place. And so when you're tired, your sense of time gets off, right? So I do think that the steak was probably genuinely overcooked, but he basically woke the chef up in the middle of the night, demanding the steak be cooked. So the chef had to get the fire going, and at the point where he's got the fire going, he's just like falling asleep while it's cooking, you know, probably. It's, I would guess a whole thing. But, like, also, Stubb wants the cook, like, the cook to basically not cook it at all. The way he described it was, next time, take a coal, hold it up to the steak for a few minutes. In Vandy News, they just dumped the goalposts in the river in celebration. Oh, wow. Man, I kind of wanted to go watch that. CJ, my brother, sent me a text saying, hey, they're taking the goalposts down Broadway. And I was like, I've got this stream. I can't go. But they got them all the way to the river. Nice. Take that, Alabama. And whoever's, sleeping with the fishes at the bottom of the river. They're awake now. Evening, Jev. Hope you weren't sleeping at the bottom of the river. Vandy just dumped our goalposts in after beating Alabama. So there we go. Lady Olong says, oh, what's this about literal moving of goalposts? Yep, that's Vandy for you. Always moving the goalposts. I'm a Vandy alum. And we only win when it's really funny. We're kind of like the Toons. We're like the Toons in Roger Rabbit. Badger has a tweet here with the, I'm going to post that in the YouTube chat. There's the goalpost going right in the river. Oh. Jevin says, the Vandy baseball team is insane. Yeah, they're legitimately good. We have, I think we got our second national championship was our baseball team. Our first national championship was women's bowling. And it was the week before the baseball team got theirs. And everybody's like, Vandy's on their way to their first national championship with this baseball team. And then the women's bowling team got a national championship. It's like, Vandy's on their way to the second national championship in 1 month with this baseball team. So, yeah, okay. Show up for Moby Dick. Nola says, shout out to the Europeans and others who know nothing of American Southern college football. I mean, in fairness, they're asleep. For the most part right now. Jevin says, pretty sure cool that you went there, though. Police eye, I'm guessing? History, actually. Guy Loco says, this doesn't look like Moby Dick. Don't worry. We'll jump right into that. Have I updated the pin? I have. What we're reading is chapter 65, The Whale is a Dish. The mortal man should feed upon the creature that feeds his lamp, and, like Stubb, eat him by his own light, as you may say. This seems so outlandish a thing that one must needs go a little into the history and philosophy of it. It is upon record that 3 centuries ago, the tongue of the right whale was esteemed a great delicacy in France, and commanded large prices there. Also, that in Henry VIII's time, a certain cook of the court obtained a handsome reward for inventing an admirable sauce to be eaten with barbecued porpoises, which, you remember, are a species of whale. Porpoises, indeed, are to this day considered fine eating. The meat is made into balls about the size of billiard balls, and being well seasoned and spiced, might be taken for turtle balls or veal balls. The old monks of Dunfermline were very fond of them. They had a great porpoise grant from the crown. The fact is that among his hunters at least, the whale would, by all hands, be considered a noble dish, were there not so much of him. But when you come to sit down before a meat pie nearly 100 feet long, it takes away your appetite. Only the most unprejudiced of men, like Stubb, nowadays partake of cooked whales. But the Esquimaux are not so fastidious. One of their most famous doctors recommends strips of blubber for infants as being exceedingly juicy and nourishing. And this reminds me that certain Englishmen who long ago were accidentally left in Greenland by a whaling vessel, that these men actually lived for several months on the moldy scraps of whales which had been left ashore after trying out the blubber. Among the Dutch whalemen, these scraps are called fritters, which indeed they greatly resemble, being brown and crisp and smelling something like old Amsterdam housewives' donuts or oily cooks when fresh. They have such an eatable look that the most self-denying stranger can hardly keep his hands off. But what further depreciates the whale as a civilized dish is his exceeding richness. He is the great prize ox of the sea. Too fat to be delicately good. Look at his hump, which would be as fine eating as the buffalo's, which is esteemed a rare dish, were it not a solid pyramid of fat. But the spermaceti itself, how bland and creamy that is, like the transparent half-jellied white meat of a coconut in the 3rd month of its growth, yet far too rich to supply a substitute for butter. Nevertheless, many whalemen have a method of absorbing it into some other substance, and then partaking of it. In the long, try watches of the night, it is a common thing for the seamen to dip their ship biscuit into the huge oil pots and let them fry here a while. Many a good supper have I thus made. In the case of the small sperm whale, the brains are accounted a fine dish. The casket of the skull is broken into with an axe, and the 2 plump whitish lobes being withdrawn, precisely resembling 2 large puddings, they are then mixed with flour and cooked into a most delectable mess. In flavor, somewhat resembling a calf's head, which is quite a dish among some epicures. And everyone knows that some young bucks among epicures, by continuously dining upon calves' brains, by and by get to have little brains of their own, so as to be able to tell a calf's head from their own head, which indeed requires uncommon discrimination. And that is the reason why a young buck with an intelligent-looking calf's head before him is somehow one of the saddest sights you can see. The head looks sort of reproachfully at him with an et tu, Brute expression. It is not, perhaps, entirely because the whale is so excessively unctuous that landsmen seem to regard the eating of him with abhorrence. That appears to result in some way from the consideration before mentioned, that a man should eat a newly murdered thing of the sea, and eat it too by its own light. But no doubt the man that first ever murdered an ox was regarded as a murderer. Perhaps he was hung, and if he had been put on trial by oxen, he certainly would have been. And he certainly deserved it, if any murderer does. Go to the meat market of a Saturday night and see the crowds of live bipeds staring up at the long rows of dead quadrupeds. Does not that take a tooth out of the cannibal's jaw? Cannibals. Who is not a cannibal? I tell you, it will be more tolerable for the Fiji that salted down a lean missionary in his summer against a common famine. It will be more tolerable for that provident Fiji, I say, in the day of judgment, than for the civilized and enlightened gourmand who nailest geese to the ground and feastest on their bloated livers in a pâté de foie gras. But stub. He eats the whale by its own light, does he? And that is adding insult to injury, is it? Look at your knife handle there, my civilized and enlightened gourmand, dining off that roast beef. What is that handle made of? What but the bones of the brother of the very ox you are eating? And what do you pick your teeth with? After devouring that fat goose, why, with a feather of the same fowl. And with what quill did the Secretary of the Society for the Suppression of Cruelty to Ganders formally indict his circulars? It is only within the last month or two that the Society passed a resolution to patronize nothing but steel pens. And that concludes Chapter 65 of Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. Any questions or thoughts? Kentucky Lucko says hello, or says meat pie 100 feet long. Yep, that's a whale for you. And then let's see. Cub Fan is raiding with a party of 321. Welcome, Cub Fan Raiders. My name is Joe Hills. I'm broadcasting live from Nashville, Tennessee. Let me show you what I am up to here on the HermitCraft server this evening. Cub, I was lurking in your stream on and off all day. I love your satisfactory streams. I hope once you get a little bit more comfortable with the game, you consider joining us sometime. I don't play 7 days a week on the Hermit Factory server. Jev, Hypno, and Asuma have that running basically at meeting time, 6 or 7 days a week. I stop in 4 or 5 days a week. It's a lot of fun. I hope you'll join us sometime. For anybody who's joining us from the raid, of course, my thing is messed up. When I wanted to show off what I'm doing, it's like, nah. Okay, let's try this. Boom. Hope you enjoy these Cub Fan quality fireworks, too. This is a visual medium, and I will not be undersold. I will not buy duds from Iskal here. I am here to fly up high. Let's unbundle these. Oh, that was the end of that bundle. Okay, that's fine. Bowie says, how are you so far zoomed out in third person? I set up a special camera utils configuration in the text file config. But anyway, we are flying over Hermit Homedale, which is a recreation I'm working on. There's Cub's Labyrinth. Cub Fan Raiders, you know Cub's Labyrinth. This is a recreation of Eero Saarinen, the architect who created the St. Louis Arch. He also built the Bell Laboratories Research and Development Center in Homedale, New Jersey, in Monmouth County. The center building there is a 1/4 mile long. It was the largest reflective glass building or mirrored glass building in the world. I'm going to post the What We're Building link. That is a Library of Congress sponsored or hosted survey of the original Bell Laboratories Research and Development Facility. The oval with the roads here, 900 meters on the major diameter end to end. 600 meters on the minor diameter. Once again, that building in the center. That's a 1/4 mile long. We're switching from metric to imperial. But you know what? That's okay. That is okay. Yep, so the mod for this is the Cam Utils mod. Though I went into the config and busted out the... it maxes out at like 5 or 10 meters away from the character. I just went in there and messed with it. Altair Remix, apparently Hearts Eero Saarinen. Yep, that is the architect from Finland who actually designed the original that we are copying here. So, if you've never seen a Joe Hills Saturday night stream before, let me tell you, you're in luck. We just finished Chapter 66 of Moby Dick. Every Saturday night, I pick a novel, and we read it while we do really grindy tasks in Minecraft, even grindier than the normal streams. All of this stone we need to gather for Etho, well, we're reading Moby Dick. Last season, I read all of Dracula 1 week at a time, every Saturday night, while doing grindy tasks. This season, it's Moby Dick. Let me, real quick, explain to you why Moby Dick is an interesting novel. because a lot of people don't understand the book. They start reading it and they're like, this is dumb. I don't know why I'm reading this. What is going on? I'm not being forced to read this. I'm done. Some of y'all, having watched Satisfactory, that's a space game, are probably familiar with the core concept of science fiction. Science fiction is basically where an author has, like, something about the world that's real, and then they add something else that's not real as, like, a building of a premise. And then they kind of jump the time forward. Like, in Star Trek, the premise was, what if we had functional warp drives and transporter beams? And they kind of jump forward. And so Moby Dick, while not technically Frankenstein, with actual science fiction concepts in it, I believe is a very early example of science fiction, in that the author has written the entire book like he knows what the internet is. This book is written by somebody who knows what forum posts are and knows what Wikipedia is, back in the 1850s. The author of this book knows what cell phones are and doesn't want to mention them in the story because it would undermine people in the era reading the book. But this is basically a story where the premise is a guy walks up to you at a party and is like, hey, what up? Call me Ishmael. Anyway, you know Holden Caulfield from, that Salinger book. I'm basically like him. I hate all these phonies on land. And so that's why I went on a whaling ship. And I want to tell you about everything I know about whaling ships now, though I'm going to be looking at my phone a lot and referencing things from Wikipedia. This book is basically a guy at a party that you don't want to talk to, trying to tell you a story and then interrupting himself by saying, oh, whoa, whoa, but let me tell you about crow's nests. And then, like, just reading you the Wikipedia article on crow's nests. I mentioned also that this book presupposes the existence of forum posts in the future. There are chapters in this book that are basically just the first post in a new subject on a forum where somebody's like, guys, I've seen some rankings of whales and they all suck. Here's my ranking of whales. There is a chapter that people are like, I got to the chapter where he ranks the whales and I had to stop reading. And I'm like, you don't understand this book at all. This book is anticipating people in the modern era saying, guys, I've seen some other people rank the different venom symbiotes, and I gotta say, they're all wrong. Like, his chapters in this book are full of call-outs where he's like, yeah, this other biologist says this, and he's wrong because I know it in my heart. This book anticipates internet-era communication better than any work of science fiction I've ever read. And I think it's increasingly relevant as more of us communicate more often over the internet that we appreciate Melville anticipating this back in 1850. Nobody has said anything in the Twitch chat for like 6 minutes now while I ranted. But this rant is basically also a preview of how the guy talks who's the main speaker in the book. Chalice Puma Sway, Raider from Cub Fan, says, I am impressed. Wandering Mass says, it's a good rant. Drewski says it's a good rant. Cub Fan says, love the rants. Abby M says, a very solid rant, highly effective. Nam-va-da-ha, banana-na-na, says, great rant. Hello, N. Rose says, love the rant. But yeah, okay, so cool. I didn't lose the entire audience during that rant. I'm glad, because we are about to read chapter 67 of Moby Dick, cutting in. So I'm going to go ahead and update the pinned link, what we're reading. Pin that, and we're going to pin that in the YouTube chat as well. I'm streaming on 3 services right now, joehills.net/live, youtube.com/joehillstsd, and twitch.tv/joehills. So, here we go. Blue Vendetta says, this is what we're here for, Joe. Hello, Ann Rose says, I actually had to put the new Zelda down for a minute so I could pay better attention. Thank you. Just Ruby says, I think we're all enthralled and bewitched by the rant. And Squirkit says, you got me invested in this. Okay, here's the other thing about Moby Dick. We are 67 chapters in, but you can really just come in whenever. Like, if you are in the zeitgeist at all, you've seen some Animaniacs. You know the core concept is Captain Ahab got his leg eaten by a whale named Moby Dick. And in theory, the plot of the book is that Captain Ahab wants revenge on Moby Dick. But in practice, the book is just all over the place. We were just talking about how people cook whale. And we're about to get into how they butcher the whales. So this is one of the chapters that gets like super deep into like different elements of ship's business, which doesn't really advance the plot, but does like inform you of how ships work. Lost Cult Music, thank you for tipping 3, who says, came for the story, stay for the epic rants. Awesome, that puts us 17 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/Joe Hills and YouTube Super Chat. The camera gets bigger every time we hit a face camera expansion milestone. Oh, wait, should be chapter 66. Oh, the Shark Massacre. Oh, the Shark Massacre. There might be some action in this chapter. Let me update that what we're reading thing. Sorry, I got ahead of myself with the raid. But yeah, Cub, I love your Satisfactory streams because seeing you approach it from first principles is really interesting. I didn't know anything about Satisfactory or Factory games, and so I just kind of let Wells and Hypno lecture me, and then internalized it. And I'm watching you play the game like it's Minecraft, and I'm like, that would have been me. There, but by the grace of God go I. Like, every time I see you pulling stuff off conveyor belts instead of out of containers, I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. That's exactly how I would have approached that. Not having an iron plate factory because we've moved on. We have moved on. Why still produce iron plates? I get it, Cub. I'm really enjoying seeing your approach to Satisfactory. But yeah, I was in and out of your stream all afternoon today and evening. And I've enjoyed it on several other occasions. So yeah, thank you for stopping by after your incredibly fun Satisfactory stream. Okay. So yeah, we just had a chapter when we opened the stream where the second mate of the ship ordered the cook to preach to the sharks to be more Christian to each other in the middle of the night when he was not happy about being woken up. And now we are on to chapter 66, the Shark Massacre. So let's see, did the Christianity work or did it not work? Okay. Chapter 66 of Moby Dick or the Whale by Herman Melville. The Shark Massacre. When in the southern fishery, a captured sperm whale, after a long and weary toil, is brought alongside late at night, it is not, as a general thing at least, customary to proceed at once to the business of cutting him in, for that business is an exceedingly laborious one, is not very soon completed, and requires all hands to be set about it. Therefore, the common usage is to take in all sails, lash the helm a lee, and then send everyone below to his hammock till daylight, with the reservation that, until that time, the anchor watches be kept, that is, 2 and 2 an hour. Each couple, the crew in rotation, shall mount the deck to see that all goes well. But sometimes, especially upon the line in the Pacific, this plan will not answer at all, because such incalculable hosts of sharks gather round the moored carcass that were he so left for 6 hours, say, on a stretch, little more than the skeleton would be visible by morning. In most other parts of the ocean, however, where these fish do not so largely abound, their wondrous voracity can be at times considerably diminished by vigorously stirring them up with sharp whaling spades, A procedure notwithstanding, which in some instances only seems to tickle them into still greater activity. But it was not thus in the present case with the Pequod's sharks, though to be sure any man unaccustomed to such sights, to have looked o'er the side that night, would have almost thought the whole round sea was one huge cheese, and those sharks were but maggots in it. Nevertheless, upon Stubb setting the anchor watch after his supper was concluded, and when, accordingly, Queequeg and a forecastle seaman came on deck, no small excitement was created among the sharks, for immediately suspending the cutting stages over the side, and lowering 3 lanterns, so that they cast long gleams of light o'er the turbid sea, these 2 mariners, darting their long whaling spades, kept up an incessant murdering of the sharks. There's a little footnote here. The whaling spade used for cutting is made of the very best steel, is about the bigness of a man's spread hand, and, in general shape, corresponds to the garden implement after which it is named. Only its sides are perfectly flat, and its upper end considerably narrower than the lower. This weapon is always kept as sharp as possible, and when being used, is occasionally honed, just like a razor. In its socket, a stiff pole, from 20 to 30 feet long, is used for a handle. By striking the keen steel deep into their skulls, seemingly their only vital part. But in the foamy confusion of their mixed and struggling hosts, the marksmen could not always hit their mark, and thus brought about new revelations of the incredible ferocity of the foe. They viciously snapped, not only at each other's disembowelments, but, like flexible bows, bent round and bit their own, till those own entrails seemed swallowed o'er and o'er again by the same mouth, to be oppositely voided by the gaping wound. Nor was this all. It was unsafe to meddle with the corpses and ghosts of these creatures. A sort of generic or pantheistic vitality seemed to lurk in their very joints and bones, after what might be called the individual life had departed. Killed and hoisted on deck for the sake of his skin, one of these sharks almost took poor Queequeg's hand off when he tried to shut down the dead lid of his murderous jaw.
Queequeg no care what god made him shark,
said the harpooner, agonizingly lifting his hand up and down.
Whether Fiji god or Nantucket god, but the god what made the shark must be damned.
And that concludes chapter 66 of Moby Dick, or the Whale, by Herman Melville. Chapter 67 follows, Cutting In. Okay, anybody have any quick thoughts or questions before we're moving on? I'm going to update the what we're reading link. But yeah, that was a grisly chapter, says Chalice Puma Sway. Mari says, it is impressive. Lunarbot says, I don't know how he can play Minecraft and read like that at the same time. Well, I'm used to reading the chat while I'm playing Minecraft. And so as a joke, I started reading poems while I was playing Minecraft. And then I started, like, reading Dracula while playing Minecraft. And it just kind of got away from me from there. Welcome, Mari. I'm glad you could be here tonight. But yeah. That is a fantastic... Centauratron says, I don't think the sharks took the word of God at heart. Or to heart. Yeah, probably not. Nola says, it used to be that not everything in a book had to matter. Different times. Crazy times. Yeah. Lunarbot says, I remember when you used to do the poems on Saturday. That was like 4 years ago. Yep. I used to do poetry every Saturday night, and then we switched over to novels. But yeah, Dracula was a lot of fun, and I wanted to do something... that a lot of people would benefit from reading, but wouldn't necessarily read on their own. You know, I'm not trying to be preachy about this, but I think this is a really interesting book, but it's a hard book to read if you don't have the right mindset or the right approach to it. And I try to bring the voices and stuff in a way that sells what I think is interesting about the book. Welcome, Sarah Sunshine, in the YouTube chat. Welcome, welcome, welcome. But yeah. So, the next chapter is going to be about butchering the whale. So, if you are not into butchering of animals, if you're somebody who freaks out about that, might be a good time to dip. Otherwise, you're welcome to stick around. But yeah, just in terms of like, this is literally a book about hunting whales and every aspect of that. And we're up to the chapter on butchering the whales, which is really interesting if you're interested in that sort of thing, but could be arguably disturbing. Scotty says, I need a Herman Melville back in school to flesh out my English essays. Lunarbot says, I always wonder why your views seem low for no reason. It's kind of a vibe, like a podcast with a video. Well, I'm also streaming on 3 services, Lunarbot. I'm on joehills.net/live, twitch.tv/joehills, and youtube.com/joehillstsd. And also, it's Saturday night, so, like, a lot of people are, like, either going to bed. Like, I could see a lot of people who just watched a 7-hour Cubs stream being like, you know what? I'm going to call it a night now. Or they're like, oh, cool. Now it's time to go hit the bars before they close, you know? So, yeah. I don't think I'm underrated. I think everybody who rates me very well. I think I'm well rated, and I have no complaints. But thank you. I appreciate the sentiment. Good luck at your Pitbull concert, Fallen Apples. See, Fallen Apples is busy at a Pitbull concert. Who I believe is a type of small dog. I'm not an expert on dogs, but it's cool that they're letting dogs do music now. Like, Cleo was telling me the stuff they're doing with cat pheromones these days is also wild. Like, but anyway, we're going to go ahead. It's a medium-sized dog. See, this is how little I know about dogs. Okay. We're going to keep offloading this stone for Etho. And the granite can go there. It's easier to do the inventory management while I'm not reading. Okay, so the sun's setting. After we sleep, then we'll start the next chapter. Let me just real quick remind people, this is a viewer-supported stream. If you're enjoying the show, the tips are welcome via paypal.me/joehills and YouTube Super Chat. And we are 17 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. I would say that says, wait, when did Joe start growing his beard back? So I decided in order to motivate myself to get episodes out more frequently, I should only shave on days where I upload an episode. And unfortunately, this latest episode required a time lapse that like took weeks to complete. And so I didn't decide to start growing my beard back out. Why does Etho need stone? For his stone shop. That's why I've mined so much. We're up to 2.182 million. I've got a trophy for 1 million stone mined. People are like, Joe, you should ask Asuma for a 2 million stone trophy. And I said, nah. I should ask Asuma for a pi million trophy. If I can get close to 3.14159.6, million stone, then I get a trophy. We don't need a 2 million stone trophy. That's just silly. Okay. So, where was I? Crocodilia says yum pie. Indeed. Yep. Nom nom nom. Nom 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 nom. Nom 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 nom. Okay. So, this was also... So, one thing to keep in mind about this book, too, is it's really interesting because the author, Herman Melville... It keeps trying to explain to Protestants that, like, the crewmen from Africa who aren't Christian are okay. But he's kind of, like, super backwards and racist about it. It's like, no, they're just as good as us. But, like, the way he has to frame it for the people of the era is really rough. So anytime I see a mention of religion, I get a little bit nervous that this is going to be one of those things where it's like he's trying not to be racist but ends up extra racist. This is a book that has value partially because the author is really positive about the contributions and individual self-worth of the entire crew, many of which are from India or China or, Africa. But, like, there's a lot of stuff in here that's very dated. And so, yeah, I'm going to change some words occasionally just to warn you, because not all the terminology is appropriate. Sometimes I'll just skip entire sentences because I was like, screaming externally. This is an important work of literature that still deserves to be studied, but, like, I'm not here saying I agree with all of the word choices. Okay. So, Chapter 67 of Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. Cutting in. It was a Saturday night, and such a Sabbath followed. Ex officio professors of Sabbath breaking are all whalemen. The ivory Pequod was turned into what seemed a shamble. Every sailor a butcher. You would have thought you were offering 10,000 red oxen up to the sea gods. In the first place, the enormous cutting tackles, among other ponderous things comprising a cluster of blocks generally painted green, and which no single man can possibly lift. This vast bunch of grapes was swayed up to the maintop and firmly lashed to the lower masthead, the strongest point anywhere above a ship's deck. The end of the hawser-like rope, winding through these intricacies, was then conducted to the windlass, and the huge lower block of the tackles was swung o'er the whale. To this block, the great blubber hook, weighing some 100 pounds, was attached, and now suspended in stages o'er the side. Starbuck and Stubb, the mates, armed with their long spades, began cutting a hole in the body for the insertion of the hook just above the two nearest side fins. This done, or the nearest of the two side fins. This done, a broad semicircular line is cut round the hole. The hook is inserted, and the main body of the crew, striking up a wild chorus, now commence heaving in one dense crowd out the windlass. When instantly the entire ship careens o'er on her side, every bolt in her starts like the nail-heads of an old house in frosty weather, she trembles, quivers, and nods her frighted mastheads to the sky. More and more she leans o'er to the whale, while every gasping heave of the windlass is answered by a helping heave from the billows, till at last a swift, startling snap is heard. With a great swash, the ship rolls upwards and backwards from the whale, and the triumphant tackle rises into sight, dragging after it the disengaged semicircular end of the first strip of blubber. Now, as the blubber envelops the whale precisely as the rind does an orange, so it is stripped from the body precisely as an orange is sometimes stripped by spiralizing it. For the strain constantly kept up by the windlass continually keeps the whale rolling o'er and o'er in the water, and the blubber in one strip uniformly peels off along the line called the scarf, simultaneously cut by the spades of Starbuck and Stubb, the mates, and just as fast as it is thus peeled off, and indeed by that very act itself, it is all the time being hoisted higher and higher aloft, till the upper end grazes the maintop. The men at the windlass then cease heaving, and for a moment or two the prodigious blood-dripping mass sways to and fro as if let down from the sky, and everyone present takes good heed to dodge when it swings, else it may box his ears and pitch him headlong overboard. One of the attending harpooneers now advances with a long, keen weapon called a boarding sword, and watching his chance, he dexterously slices out a considerable hole in the lower part of the swaying mass. Into this hole, the end of the second alternating great tackle is then hooked, so as to retain a hold upon the blubber, in order to prepare for what follows. Whereupon, this accomplished swordsman, warning all hands to stand off, once more makes a scientific dash at the mass, and, with a few sidelong, desperate, lunging slicings, severs it completely in twain. So that while the short lower part is still fast, the long upper strip, called a blanket piece, swings clear and is ready for lowering. The heavers forward now resume their song, and while the one tackle is peeling and hoisting a second strip from the whale, the other is slowly slackened away. And down goes the first strip through the main hatchway, right beneath, into an unfurnished parlor called the blubber room. Into this twilight apartment, sundry nimble hands keep coiling away the long blanket piece, as if it were a great live mass of plaited serpents. And thus the work proceeds, the two tackles hoisting and lowering simultaneously, both whale and windlass heaving. The heavers singing, the blubber room gentlemen coiling, the mates scarfing, the ship straining, and all hands swearing occasionally, by way of assuaging the general friction. And thus concludes Chapter 67 of Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. Welcome, Silent Whisperer Raiders. You guys joined in the middle of me reading a chapter of Moby Dick. Every Saturday night, I read Moby Dick live while doing grindy stuff in Minecraft. I have mined out over 2.185 million stone so far this season. You can't really do that unless you can keep the people entertained. So, we are reading Moby Dick, a story that presages the invention of the internet better than any other I've read. The whole thing is written like a guy at a party is telling you about a time he went whaling while constantly referencing Wikipedia. So, here we go. I need to update our link on what we're reading now that we've finished that chapter. Any thoughts or questions about that chapter from the folks at home? We've got 3 chats now: YouTube, Discord, and Twitch. Anybody have any questions or thoughts before we move on? There's a lot of short chapters here, so we're kind of trying to plow through them tonight. Some nights we only get through one chapter because the chapter is like 3 hours long. But these are... I wanted to try to get through all the chapters about butchering the whale at once, so that way people who were squeamish could just skip that entire VOD. Lionel Hutt says a shambles is the slaughterhouse floor of an abattoir, by the way. Hey, good to know. We are going through here, and we probably should go find a place to settle down for the night, because I think I'm the only one on the server. Oh, Jevin's online, but he's not always the best sleeper, especially if he's busy. So we're going to just jump up here real quick. Tonight's gonna be a good night. Yeah, these were mountains before. Tonight's gonna be a good, good night. I got a feeling. Abby says, where do you post your VODs? So, let me find that. The VODs are posted in the Moby Dick playlist. I did that wrong. Moby Dick playlist. Where is that? Yeah, there is. We only do VODs for the novel reading so that people can catch up. I have a bet on my beacon. What? Says 20 Alucard. Yeah. So I've got a standardized beacon storage system where we've got beacons every 100 blocks in a grid, and they all have like a bed and chests and anvils and furnaces all in the same places. So that way I can always find them no matter where I'm at. Oh, look at this creeper. I bet he's here to help me mine. You here to help me mine, bud? Good job. Thank you. Yeah, we can come clean up these stone that are still hanging out here in the sky later. But yeah. So this one has a bed. They all have little pools too, so I don't waste fireworks. And then I can just like trident between them. So like, here's this pool. This is actually, I need to stop here and get a different bag of fireworks actually. As well. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. La da da da. Okay. But yeah, I don't make VODs of every stream because the streams are kind of behind the scenes of making the episodes. And also YouTube, there's a bunch of problems. There's a bunch of problems with the copyright checking on VODs lately. And I have a lot of my own music I play. And I was having to I was experimenting with like what songs I could put in VODs and not have it throw the copyright errors. It's just not worth it. It's basically I couldn't do the stream I wanted to and do VODs. So on the nights we do Moby Dick, I just don't play any music at all, which also means that I don't get to take a hydration break in the middle of the stream. So I have to like pre-plan. So I have not only my cup of drink, but I also have like a bottle. But that's bad for me because I don't get to get out of the room and circulate, like breathe different air. CO2 monitor's up to 1545 parts per million down here. So yeah, I really should be. It's good for me to get up and get a hydration break because the CO2 builds up if I'm in this one room constantly. But whatever, it's fine. Can't wait for bundles in vanilla, says Lionel Hut. Ken Dreadful says, that creeper only got 2 blocks. That's not a good job. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, he's doing more than some people. Okay. Centauritron says, yeah, that creeper is doing more than me. I mined 0 blocks on this project. Exactly. It's Rick's me that says, or it's Prescription me says, why can't you leave the room? Well, normally I put on music to leave the room for breaks in the middle of the streams, but I've been getting all these copyright problems from YouTube. And so if I put VODs up of the streams with music in them. And so on these Moby Dick reading nights, I don't want the VOD to get taken down or have problems with it. So I don't do any music, which means I just can't leave the room for the whole stream. But we're 90 minutes into a 2-hour stream, and we're about to read chapter 68, The Blanket. Have I updated the what we're reading link? I have. Okay, cool. Okay. So they were referring, I'm assuming, to the blanket of blubber that has been lowered into that blubber room. But we'll find out when we actually start reading the chapter. Doesn't look like anybody really has any questions or anything about chapter 67. It's a pretty straightforward chapter about butchering a whale by spiralizing it. So yeah, there we go. Even with the haste beacon, these coal blocks take forever to mine, which is not great. But, okay. How am I on inventory space? Yeah, we're going to empty our inventory real quick, and then we will start the chapter. Just as a reminder, this is a viewer-supported stream, and by my abacus here, we are how far from the next expansion milestone? Abacus says 17 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Maple J, thank you for the raid. We are just about to read chapter 68 of Moby Dick, or the Whale by Herman Melville, which was in the stream title and you raided me anyway. So, I mean, at a certain point, you've determined your own level of involvement. Here we go. Chapter 68, The Blanket. I have given no small attention to that not unvexed subject, the skin of the whale. I have had controversies about it with experienced whalemen afloat and learned naturalists ashore. My original opinion remains unchanged, but it is only an opinion. The question is, what and where is the skin of the whale? Already, you know what his blubber is. The blubber is something of the consistence of firm, close-grained beef, but tougher, more elastic and compact, and ranges from 8 to 12 and 15 inches in thickness. Now, however preposterous it may seem at first to talk of any creature's skin as being any of that sort of consistence and thickness, yet in point of fact, there are no arguments against such a presumption, because you cannot raise any other dense enveloping layer from the whale's body but by that same blubber. And the outermost enveloping layer of any animal, if reasonably dense, what can that be but the skin? True. From the unmarred dead body of the whale, you may scrape off with your hand an infinitely thin, transparent substance, somewhat resembling the thinnest shreds of isinglass. Only it is almost as flexible and soft as satin, that is, previous to be beaten dried, when it not only contracts and thickens, but becomes rather hard and brittle. I have several such dried bits, which I use for marks in my whale books. It is transparent, as I have said before, and being laid upon the printed page, I have sometimes pleased myself with fancying it exerted a magnifying influence. At any rate, it is pleasant to read about whales through their own spectacles, as you may say. But what I am driving at here is this. The same infinitely thin isinglass substance, which, I admit, invests the entire body of the whale, is not so much to be regarded as the skin of the creature, so much as the skin of the skin, so to speak. For it were simply ridiculous to say that the proper skin of the tremendous whale is thinner and more tender than that of a newborn child. But no more of this. Assuming the blubber to be the skin of the whale, when this skin, as in the case of a very large sperm whale, will yield the bulk of 100 barrels of oil, and when it is considered that, in quantity, or rather weight, that oil, in its express state, is only 3/4, and not the entire substance of the coat, some idea may hence be made yet of the enormousness of that animated mass, a mere part of whose mere integument yields such a lake of liquid as that. Reckoning 10 barrels to the ton, you have 10 tons for the net weight of only 3/4 of the stuff of a whale's skin. In life, the visible surface of the sperm whale is not least among the many marvels he presents. Almost invariably, it is all over obliquely crossed and recrossed with numberless straight marks in thick array, something like those in the finest Italian line engravings. But these marks do not seem to be impressed upon the isinglass substance above mentioned. Sorry, I lost my place. But seem to be seen through it, as if they were engraved upon the body itself. Nor is this all. In some instances, to the quick, observant eye, those linear marks, as in a veritable engraving, but afford the ground for other delineations. These are hieroglyphical. That is, if you call those mysterious ciphers on the walls of the pyramids hieroglyphics, then that is the proper word to use in the present connection. By my retentive memory of the hieroglyphics upon one sperm whale in particular, I was much struck with a pale representing the old native characters chiseled on the famous hieroglyphic palisades on the banks of the upper Mississippi. Like those mystic rots, too, the mystic marked whale remains undecipherable. This allusion to the Mississippian rocks reminds me of another thing. Besides all the other phenomena which the exterior of the sperm whale presents, he not seldom displays the back, and more especially his flanks, effaced in great part of the regular linear appearance by reason of numerous rude scratches, altogether of a regular, rude aspect. Or altogether of an irregular, random aspect. I should say that those New England rocks on the seacoast, with Agassiz imagines to bear the marks of violent scraping contact with vast flowing icebergs, imagines to bear the marks of violent scraping contact with vast floating icebergs. I should say that those rocks must not a little resemble the sperm whale in this particular. It also seems to me that such scratches in the whale are probably made by hostile contact to other whales, for I have most remarked them in large, full-grown bulls of the species. A word or two more concerning this matter. For the skin or blubber of the whale, it has already been said that it is stripped from him in long pieces, called blanket pieces. Like most sea terms, this one is very happy and significant, for the whale is indeed wrapped up in his blubber as in a real blanket or counterpane, or still better, a native poncho split over his head and skirting his extremity. It is by reason of this cozy blanketing of his body that the whale is enabled to keep himself comfortable in all weathers, in all seas, in all times, in all tides. What would become of a Greenland whale, say, in those shuddering icy seas of the north, if unsupplied with a cozy surtout? True, other fish are found exceedingly brisk in those Hyperborean waters, but these, be it observed, are your cold-blooded, lungless fish, whose very bellies are refrigerators, creatures that warm themselves under the lee of an iceberg, as a traveler in winter would bask before an inn fire. Whereas, like man, the whale has lungs and warm blood. Freeze his blood, and he dies. How wonderful is it then, except after explanation, that this great monster, to whom corporeal warmth is as indispensable as it is to man, how wonderful that he should be found at home, immersed to his lips for life in those Arctic waters, where when seamen fall overboard, They are sometimes found months afterward, perpendicularly frozen into fields of ice, as a fly is found glued in amber. But more surprising it is to know, as it has been proved by by experiment, that the blood of a polar whale is warmer than that of a Borneo African in summer. It does seem to me that herein we see the rare virtue of a strong individual vitality, and the rare virtue of thick walls, and the rare virtue of interior spaciousness. Oh, man, admire and model thyself after the whale. Do thou too remain warm among ice? Do thou too live in this world without being of it? Be cool at the equator. Keep thy blood fluid at the pole. Like the domes of St. Peter's, and like the great whale, retain, O man, in all seasons a temperature of thy own. But how easy and how hopeless to teach these fine things. Of erections, how few are domed like St. Peter's. Of creatures, how few are vast as the whale. And that concludes chapter 68 of Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. Mr. White Mustache says, King Yap of Ishmael. Yeah, Ishmael yaps nonstop. S25 says, I hear Nashville's hopping tonight. Yeah, conquer and prevail. I mean, I'm a Vandy alum myself. Yeah, I missed them throwing the goalposts into the river because I was setting up for the stream. But I kind of wish I had seen it. Welcome, Lady Oolong, who says that isinglass is a gelatin extracted from the swim bladders of fish. Interesting. NJ says, my brother's in your neck of the woods this weekend. Oh, cool. Well, if he wants to go, I hear there's some free goalposts if anybody can fish them out of the river. If he wants some free goalposts to bring back on his flight. Gotcha, ICCC. No, that's cool. Yeah, I just, I can't justify going to a toy convention. I have basically almost no collectibles, and the collectibles I have, were all gifts that I can't get rid of because they were gifts. I don't know. I need to have fewer possessions in general. It's fine. Badger says isinglass is the reason a lot of beer and wine isn't technically vegetarian. Oh, interesting. Ken Dreadful says it's used for making stouts. Interesting. Wandering Mass says, Ishmael really pausing half a dozen times in the gory part of his story to tell you about his thesis about whale skin. I mean, this is Ishmael. Even though Ishmael isn't in 90% of the story, the way he tells the story tells us so much about him. A few weeks ago, there was a part of the story where he was telling us about talking to some Spaniards about his whaling voyage and how bored the Spaniards were by most of the story. Like, this is explicitly written knowing that Ishmael is supposed to be a bit of a bore. Ken Dreadful says, Ishmael is the king of making up guys to get mad at. I know, right? Yeah, the goalpost went yeet into the Cumberland River here in Nashville. Once again, conquer and prevail. I'm a Vandy alum. You'll love to see it. Okay. So, I'm just going to go ahead and ditch some of this stuff before we continue our story. Any other thoughts or questions or comments on this chapter? Let me go ahead and post the tipping link. We started with chapter 64. We've read 5 chapters of Moby Dick already today. Badger says, time goes fast when you're playing with Halloween decorations. Oh, yeah, we were playing a fun game earlier called, is that a Halloween decoration or bachelorettes waiting for their Uber outside cackling? Because I kept hearing these witch noises, and I was like, what is that? No, it's just some people waiting for their Uber. Nashville is the bachelorette capital of the world, basically, at this point. And so everywhere you go, there's people waiting outside for their Ubers and cackling. It's kind of amazing. I'm not complaining. Appreciate the tax revenue. But yeah. So, chapter 69 is called The Funeral. And this is the last chapter I think we're going to read tonight. If I prepared for this stream correctly, by which I mean, like, frantically looked at something at the last minute. Mr. White Mustache says, I watched you when I was a kid. Can I see you do a live Joe Hills intro? Sure. I mean, I open every stream by saying, howdy, y'all. Joe Hills here, recording as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee. But, I mean, I can do it in the middle of the stream, too. I mean, I'm reading Moby Dick out loud. I can do whatever I want. You know? Like, yeah, so let's see. So yeah, we were $17 away from our next face camera expansion milestone by my abacus. If you're enjoying the show, feel free to tip. Okay. Yeah, I'm not a Twitch partner or affiliate, so there's no cheering or bits or subs or whatever. But whatever. I get a better cut this way. I feel like if somebody gives $5 to a streamer, they want as much of that $5 to go to the streamer as possible. So that's how we're doing. Okay. Somehow I lost the window that had the book in it. Here it is. Chapter 69, The Funeral. Okay, did I repin that? I think I did. Replace pin message. Squirkit says your link seems to be mixed up. Is it? Works for me. Yeah, for some reason the hashtag bit is messing up. Oh. Oh, I see what happened here. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I see it now. What we're reading. La 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 da 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 da. We just wanna party all the time. Yeah, new link. Place pin message. You know, I feel like we should take a break real quick and recite the entire Vanderbilt alma mater. Take that, Alabama. On our city's western border, reared against the sky, proudly stands our alma mater as the years roll by. Forward ever be thy watchword, conquer and prevail. Hail to thee, our alma mater, Vanderbilt, all hail. There we go. There's a third verse, but nobody sings it, so we're not going to sing it. Because I'm nobody! Or I'm not nobody? I don't know. Chapter 69 of Moby Dick or the Whale by Moby Dick. No, Herman Melville. The Funeral. Haul in the chains. Let the carcass go astern. The vast tackles have now done their duty. The peeled white body of the bee-headed whale flashes like a marble sepulchre. Though changed in hue, it has not perceptibly lost anything in bulk. It is still a colossal. Slowly, it floats more and more away, the water round it torn and splashed by the insatiate sharks. The air above vexed with rapacious flights of screaming fowls, whose beaks are like so many insulting poniards into the whale. The vast, white, headless phantom floats further and further from the ship. Every rod that it so floats, what seems square. Roods of sharks and cubic roods of fowls augment the murderous din. For hours and hours, the almost stationary ship, from that almost stationary ship, that hideous sight is seen. Beneath the unclouded and mild azure sky, upon the fair face of the pleasant sea, wafted by the joyous breezes, that great mass of death floats on, till lost in infinite perspectives. There's a most doleful and mocking funeral. The sea vultures all in pious mourning, the air sharks all punctiliously in black or speckled. In life, but few of them would have helped the whale, I ween, if peradventure he had needed it. But upon the banquet of his funeral, they most piously do pounce. O horrible vulturism of earth, from which not the mightiest whale is free. Nor is this the end. Desecrated as the body is, a vengeful ghost survives, and hovers over it to scare. Espied by some timid man of war or blundering discovery vessel from afar, when the distance obscuring the swarming fowls nevertheless still shows the white mass floating in the sun, and the white spray heaving high against it, straightway the whale's unharming corpse with its trembling fingers is set down in the logs. Shoals, rocks, and breakers hereabouts, beware. And for years afterwards, perhaps, ships shun the place, leaping o'er it as a silly sheep leap over a vacuum, because their leader originally leaped there when a stick was held. There's your law of precedence. There's your utility of traditions. There's the whole story of your obstinate survival of old beliefs never bottomed on the earth and now not even hovering in the air. There's orthodoxy! Thus, while in life the great whale's body may have been a real terror to his foes, in death his ghost becomes a powerless panic to a world. Are you a believer in ghosts, my friend? There are other ghosts than the Cochran one, and far deeper men than Dr. Johnson who believe in them. And that concludes chapter 69 of Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville, in which the author is just basically like, everything you believe about tradition is stupid. Like, this book is very, this book is very Holden Caulfield, very Catcher in the Rye. There's a lot of, like, all you phonies jumping over a vacuum because the sheep in front did. Uh-huh. Lambs, all of you lambs. There's your orthodoxy. I enjoy this book. I feel like there's a lot here to enjoy. It's an interesting novel, and I'm glad that y'all have chosen to enjoy it with me, because honestly, it's such a lengthy and time-consuming read that it's hard for me to justify taking time out of my year or years to catch up on Moby Dick. It's a wild, wild book, and I appreciate you giving me the excuse to do so. The best way you can justify me doing this, instead of helping my, I keep wanting to say fiance, my spouse, Badger Spanner, set up all the Halloween decorations, is by tipping. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. This is going to be the last call for tips for the evening because we are 8 minutes away from the end of the stream. Does anybody have any final thoughts on each chapter? What we read tonight in general, anything? Cub Fan Raiders, thank you again. Other Raiders, thank you again for joining. Wandering Mask, you never need to feel obliged to tip. Folks who do are making it possible for me to do this all the time. Folks who support the stream once. Somebody tipped $1 the other night. And that's more than I would have made if they watched every YouTube episode I ever made over the course of a year. Folks tipping what they can when they can is more than I could hope for. You're always appreciated, whether it's a tipping night or not for you. Lionel Hutt says, congratulations on the marriage, by the way. Thank you. I'm very happy about it. We actually have the wedding photos up now at joehills.net/justmarried. Let me go ahead and post that link for anybody. And also the toast from the best man just went up last night. I haven't posted that on my own website yet, but I've got the YouTube link for that. Best Man Toast. So if you're looking for something to watch after this stream, you can watch my best man. He asked my Discord, my Patreon Discord, to do a Mad Libs prompt thing for his speech and didn't tell them what it was for. And shockingly, a bunch of people were like, oh, hey, here's somebody who I never see talk here who's just asking for a bunch of nouns and verbs and adjectives. Yeah, let's go. Places, sure. But yeah, this has been a fun night. Making some progress on our build, making some progress on getting stone for a good old etho. Ken Dreadful says, the asides from Ishmael about his whale fan theories read exactly like academic pettiness that I love. We're just missing the name of his nemesis. He has called out by name several different, like, marine biologists of his era. I don't know which one is his nemesis, because he calls so many of them out. He's like, you might think this is a good book. You're wrong. There's one good chapter. I'm going to begrudgingly refer you to this one chapter, this one book. But if you read the rest of that book, you're an idiot. And the guy who wrote it's an idiot. He knew nothing about all the stuff he wrote about except one thing. And he must have probably lucked into that. Maybe his nephew wrote it for him. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, Moby Dick. I'm really enjoying it. And I'm glad that some of y'all are too. But yeah, thank you to everybody who raided and who stuck around after the raids. Da, 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 da. We're just going to keep loading up these shulkers here. So much to do, so much to see. La, da, 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 dee. Oh boy. We are actually... We've got all these filled. Let's head on over to that way. La, da, 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 da. Da da dun da da dun dun. Bum 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 bum. Calicozy7 says, hey Joe, never chatted before, but it's nice to be here. Glad to have you. Yeah, lurkers are always welcome in this stream. I like to make stuff that people can listen to while they get stuff done. And I don't expect them to have the intention to chat all the time. So, I'm glad to have you here tonight. And many other nights, it sounds like. Thank you. Let's see what we got going on in the Discord chat here. Just NJ saying, oh, to Badger saying time goes fast when playing with Halloween decorations. Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the living room and it's just gonna be all Halloween all the time, and the time is now. We actually still have a bunch of Halloween decorations in storage. So Badger's Halloween decorations from England arrived via ship, and my Halloween decorations are still in storage. I need to go pull those out. I have not listened to the Moby Dick concept album Leviathan by Mastodon. That's interesting though. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Zimmy Baby 25. Who writes that it's one of their favorite albums. Very cool. We're clearing out all of the stone. La da 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 da. It's super heavy. Awesome. Kind of like the Undersea metal album from Metalocalypse. Calicozy says, currently working on my portfolio. I'm applying to interior design for university, and I'm very excited. Hey, good luck to you. That sounds awesome. Bum 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 bum, coming up on the half hour. If you got any final thoughts, we're wrapping up in about 2 minutes. So now's a great time to get them in the chat, or forever hold your peace. Also, tips do sometimes take a few minutes to come through. So if you tip after the cutoff for the stream, I will appreciate it either way, but I apologize. I might not be able to thank you live on the air. Okay. We're going to come over here and grab more bread from our bread ziggurat. This is the ziggurat in which we keep the grain. Raindrop I wash. Uh-oh. Oh, did I put the food box away? Nom 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 noms. Nom nom noms. Raindrop I wash says, I've made it to stream for a long time. Hope you're doing well. I am doing well. Thank you so much for asking. We're going to consolidate some of these. We're going to move these into the granite box there. Okay, coal in the coal box. Nam vadaha banana. Says thanks for the stream, Joe. Hey, thanks for stopping by. Nam vadaha banana. Glad to have you, as always. Okay, I see another tip has hit my alerts. Let me just finish removing this, and then we'll go ahead and thank that kind, generous soul. Let's see who it is from. Thank you very much to Aaron S. Ferreira, tipping 5. That's going to get us now 12 away from our next face camera expansion milestone. Appreciate you, Aaron. Wait. Oh, I read the abacus wrong. We're actually not 5 away from... We're not 12 away from the next one. We actually just... No, we're 8 past. Oh, so here we go. Expatios. Do. Sorry, everybody, for my poor math skills. We're going to lower the Joe Pasty now to 60%. Da-da-da-da. There we go. Okay. The Joni Stark helmet cam for the last 30 seconds of the stream. Oh boy, we're on our way out the door, aren't we? Yep. Okay. Boy, I really don't want to leave this bit hanging there, so we're going to climb back up real quick and remove that because it looks ugly. What if Cubfan flies by here? I can't have that. I can't have Cubfan visiting his labyrinth and seeing this random floating stone. That's not okay. Quill says Zig Grain Rat? Yeah, why not? Why not? Okay. Doing it live. Okay. So we're going to remove that part there that's also kind of floating. Zimbaby says, I need 3D glasses to watch the gameplay and watch you. It's actually 2-dimensional, but thank you. I'm glad you feel that way in general. Okay, so real quick, we are going to close out the stream by flying to the edge of the spray pool and admiring the building from that angle, because that's where the building is intended. People coming down the drive are going to be looking at it from over there. Look at that. If I duck out of the way, you can actually see the building. Not like the whole thing, but that's a lot of the building. We're making progress. Woo! I'm so excited. This is a 18 to 24 month project. 18 to 24 month project. Wow. Okay. This is why Cub can stream for 7 hours and be fine. I hit the 2-hour mark and my brain is melted. So we're going to wrap up for the night. I'm going to go land on this bed and prepare to log off. Let's see what is going on in the rest of the world. Just as a reminder, if you want to keep up with my streaming schedule, you can always see what I'm up to at joehills.net/soon. North Star Guitars rolling in late, Nate. We are literally on our way out the door. joehills.net/soon. We'll have that schedule for you. But yeah, I hope you're doing well out west. Let's see what else is going on. Okay, so, and make sure that last night we had like 2 tips roll in right after I cut off the stream. So I'm just double checking to make sure we haven't missed any. No, we're good. We're good. Okay. I feel real bad when that happens. I always want to thank people that night if I can. Wow. My following. How are there 20 live channels that I'm following on Saturday night? Normally Saturday night's kind of dead. Okay. So. Okay. I'm rolling up. I don't like rating people that I just rated. So. This person's supposedly doing a charity stream. Let me see if I can vet the charity real quick. I feel bad about that. All hands and hearts. Volunteer-powered disaster relief. Founded in late 2017. Yeah, I don't like rating charity streams if I don't at least, like, quickly verify this is a real thing. Okay. Well, LEJ South Carolina is doing a charity stream benefiting All Hands and Hearts disaster relief for Asheville and Western North Carolina. When you get over there, our raid message is going to be, howdy y'all, Joe Hill's raid here. Looks like LEJ is playing one of my favorite spooky pinball games, Elvira's House of Horrors. I actually built Elvira's House of Horrors in the last season of HermitCraft. Not the whole pinball machine, but the house itself from the pinball machine. When you get over there, our raid message, once again, howdy y'all, Joe Hill's raid here. Until next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring. Stop streaming, stopping the stream. Sorry, Nate, the stream is not going to be able to be rewinded because it doesn't save the VOD once I click private.